Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us online today. Welcome to the Cartrack webinar titled How High-Performing Fleets Save Time and Money. My name is Chandrika, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at what we'll be covering today. One of the topics would be understanding workflow optimization, followed by how workflow optimization improves fleet performance and the tools and features that enables smarter fleet management. And of course, we'll be touching on the Italian baker success story, challenges, solutions, and outcomes. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Ian Chia. Ian is the Enterprise Sales Manager at Cartrack Malaysia, bringing extensive experience in managing large-scale fleet management projects and enterprise accounts. Since joining Cartrack in 2024, he has worked closely with major organizations, including Shell Malaysia, LNR Logistics, MRCB, Senheng, and the Italian Baker, where he successfully led the deployment of over 300 units within a month to meet a critical FMS implementation deadline. Ian has also supported the rollout of Cartrack's fleet management solutions for customers across Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, and Sarawak, helping businesses improve operational efficiency and fleet visibility. We are excited to have him with us today to share his insights and expertise. With that, I'll hand the floor over to Ian to take us through today's presentation.
Thanks so much, Chandrika. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Yes, as she mentioned, my name is Ian Chia, Enterprise Sales Manager for Cartrack, and it's my pleasure to be able to go through our webinar today with you. Maybe before we start, let me give a little bit of background on Cartrack as a company. So our focus and our main goal is to deliver operational intelligence to simplify physical decision making so businesses stay in control. So that is, we use our Cartrack fleet management system to give the decision making capabilities to businesses and allowing them to control not just how their fleet operates, but also how efficient their fleet can be. At the moment, we are located in over 20 nations globally, and we are in Malaysia, 5-star Miros certified, which we are very proud of. And this is a little bit of background on our global operations. So we have over 2.8 million vehicles currently using our system across 125,000 businesses. And we are also listed on the NASDAQ under our parent company, Caro. And we have full control over our systems, which means that we are constantly updating and improving the system as the market evolves and requirements of our customers evolve alongside it. So let's move straight into today's webinar topic. So common operational challenges in today's fast-paced FMCG industry. So, of course, Cartrack focuses on fleet and equipment management, logistics and delivery operations management, field worker management, video-based safety, ESG compliance and reporting, risk mitigation, and warehouse and other systems integration. Essentially, we are looking to be your all-in-one solution with regards to FMCG operations, as well as, of course, in other industries. But today we'll be focusing specifically on FMCG, as that is where we have a lot of success in Malaysia and across the world. So many people may not know, but the cost of bad data is actually quite astonishing. 15 to 25% or more of companies' revenue can be affected by bad data. So Cartrack focuses a lot on providing actionable and useful data to our users and our customers so that they will be able to make the right decisions to take full control over their fleet operations. So studies have shown that manual work can take up to 50% of an operation's time, and sudden vehicle breakdown can easily cost 3 to 5 times more than an initial repair would have. So on the manual work side, managers can spend hours chasing the drivers for their location, filling up job sheets, doing data input, doing data validation, and all of that. And the cost for a vehicle breakdown being more than the initial repair will be reflected in the needing to do emergency towing, the vehicle being off the road for an extended period of time, secondary mechanical damage to other parts that may not have been damaged if the repair was done earlier, and of course, premium diagnostic fees that may be required to identify the issues within the vehicle and repair said issues. So some of the let's call them challenges that may be faced by a FMCG operator could be a lack of visibility of their vehicles, lack of information on their driver behavior, lack of historic info, no fuel monitoring, so not being able to understand how your fleet is consuming fuel, which will allow you to better understand why your fuel bill is where it is at, and of course, much more manual work. So preparing reports, preparing graphs, analyzing your fleet operations manually by going through data bit by bit. That can always, of course, reflect on the operations and the efficiencies of an FMCG fleet. And something that may not be so obvious would also be the effect it may have on the operator's personnel. So if, for example, an admin person may have to take 3 hours to do fuel validation a week, but they also have to do that on top of their other responsibilities, that could end up having overtime, which may have lack of time to spend with their family, which will add to stress, which could detrimentally affect their working ability and of course their morale, which can lead to turnovers and people leaving the company and all of that, and loss of valuable personal resources. So what is workflow optimization and how does it positively affect the operations of an FMCG company? Well, workflow optimization can be broken down into 4 key areas. So that would be analyzing, restructuring, automating, and monitoring. So in the analyzation category, that's where you will identify the inefficiencies. You will be able to use the data collected to understand what is going on with the fleets and how the vehicles are operating and how the drivers are behaving. With this analysis, you'll be able to look at restructuring certain workflows and certain activities to eliminate unnecessary manual processing and to streamline the work that is done by the personnel within the operations team, which can then lead to automating certain tasks. So, for example, using systems to generate reports and graphs and to validate fuel transactions rather than having that be done in a manual manner. And finally, monitoring, which is where you track the performance, you observe the effects of changes and the restructuring that you've been done, and you'll give you a better understanding of how the fleet is actually operating in real life on the roads. So how does workflow optimization save time specifically? So it allows for greater visibility. So knowing where your vehicles are, monitoring the route progress, and identifying delays will allow the operators to have much more control over where their vehicles are, how their drivers are doing their jobs, and understanding and making sure that customers receive the deliveries on time. It will faster decision making, will allow for on-the-fly flexibility for adjustments of certain delivery activities, certain fleet management, to respond to incidents and inquiries faster, reduce the time spent gathering information, and allowing for a more agile operation. Better resource utilization will come in when you are able to assign the right person to the right job. You're able to identify which routes may not be as efficient as others, and of course, improve your driver productivity by reducing downtime, reducing the time taken to go from A to B in terms of delivery and so on. You greatly reduce your manual input. So having a system in today's day and age is very essential because we have moved on from the days of manual reports and manual, form filling and all of that, where you want to be able to have systems that do most of this manual labor work for you, which frees up your time to do much more revenue based activities that will benefit the company specifically on the operation side. And you get more consistent delivery. So improving your punctuality, meeting customers' expectation, and of course, showing the customers that you are a reliable supplier. You are reliable, you are always on time, you are able to meet the deadlines required, and you are able to supply the customers in an efficient and on-time basis. How does it optimize, how does workflow optimization save money? So that is where we go into a lot more on the vehicle and the fuel. So detecting fuel fraud and theft. By monitoring your fuel levels in the vehicles, you'll be able to know when they refuel, how much they refuel, and also to detect whether or not there is fuel theft. Perhaps someone is siphoning fuel out of the vehicles. So with a fuel monitoring system, you'll be able to detect that. On the fraud side, you'll be able to do fuel validation, fuel transaction validation. So specifically with Cartrack, we have a system where we are linked with the Shell fuel cards that allows us to automatically validate the transactions as they come in to ensure that what is purchased at the pump is seen going into the vehicle. You can extend the vehicle life. So this is what we call preventative maintenance. So that is maintaining and keeping the vehicle in a workable condition that will minimize the downtime and, of course, minimize the cost required to repair vehicles or to send them to the workshop. And you prevent accidents. So a better maintained vehicle obviously will have better brakes, better tires, which means less accidents and less failures of these essential components in the vehicle, which will reduce insurance premiums and in the best case also save lives, because in the worst case scenario when you have an accident there could be loss of life, and even in the best case scenario of an accident you have vehicle downtime and vehicle repairs. Yeah, so also less hours spent on validation. So that frees up the personnel time so that they'll be able to focus on activities that are more revenue generating. So they don't have to, spend time doing manual work that could be done by a system in a much quicker period. So for example, we had a customer where they had about 30 vehicles and each vehicle had about 5 transactions a day. So that would be 150 in a week, and all of these transactions will have to be validated manually by an admin personnel at the end of the week. And this could take up to 3 minutes per transaction. So you're looking at almost 4 to 6 hours of work just to validate fuel transactions. Whereas with the Cartrack system, all this validation is done pretty much instantly. When the validation is submitted into the system itself will compare the transaction from the receipt or from the fuel card to the information and data collected by the fleet management system, which will then validate to ensure that the fuel transactions are matching with what was actually used by the vehicle. And finally, more time on the road allows you to have more revenue. As we all know, the more deliveries you can make, the more product you're able to sell, the more customers you're able to bring in. So that will result in positive revenue for the company. So workflow optimization is definitely a cycle. It is never ending because the art of optimization and the art of efficiency is something that constantly needs to be reviewed, constantly needs to be acted upon. So how we see it is you observe, which is the C aspect. You see the data you're collecting, you see how your trucks are operating, how your operations are moving. You analyze what that means, where the efficiencies are, where the inefficiencies are, where you can improve. And once these are identified, you are able to act on them. You are able to implement your workflow optimizations. You're able to remove the inefficiencies. You're able to improve the workflows. And that is where you see the improvement in your operations. And once the improvement has been noted and the improvement has been seen, you return back to the beginning where you observe again, how is your operations doing now? Are there still inefficiencies? Are things going as well as you had hoped? Where are you perhaps lacking? Where could there be improvement? And then you begin again with the analyzing, the acting, and the improvement. So it's an ongoing cycle. It's something that is not done just once. It's something that requires, active maintenance, active observation to ensure that you maintain the highest level of efficiency in your FMCG operations. Now let's look quickly at our recent success story where we worked with the Italian baker, the producers of Massimo bread in Malaysia, to assist them with the rollout of their new FMS solution under Cartrack for their fleet of vehicles. So how did the fleet managers of a leading Malaysian bread manufacturer manage their operation time and costs? So initially, when we spoke to them, they shared with us a few of the challenges that they were facing in their operations. So one of them was manual processes, as I've already touched on, where a lot of their day-to-day operations were still done quite manually. Certain reports needed to be generated in a manual way. They had to do data input, they had to do data analysis, all in a manual sense using Excel and other programs, rather than having a system that would help them to do all of this busy work automatically, pretty much. They also had a lot of operational costs where they weren't sure exactly how much fuel was being consumed, whether the fuel bill was accurate or not. Another thing that they also mentioned was that inefficient resource utilization. So some personnel were maybe being used for certain activities that could have been done by a system rather than needing like one or two people to do it on a manual basis daily. So that's where that resource could have been applied in a more effective, more revenue generating manner. So with this in mind, Cartrack recommended the implementation of our MyFleet solution. So this is our fuel fraud validation and cost management system, which supports API integration, so linking directly with Shell's fuel card. So Cartrack is globally partnered with Shell, which allows us to link directly with their Shell fuel card or Shell fleet card system to extract the transactions directly into the MyFleet system for fuel transaction validation. So recording the fuel cost, the compliance cost in one central platform, detecting fuel loss and validating fuel transactions, simplifying fleet administration processes, which will result in less human errors, and forecasting budgets and allocation of resources more effectively. So this also can be applied to vehicle maintenance. So for example, you may have two lorries of the same make, model, and year of manufacture. However, one may have had much more repairs compared to the other in a span of 1 year, which may highlight to you as the operator that this particular vehicle may be what is known as a lemon, where it's maybe not as well made as another one, which could justify that vehicle being disposed and replaced with a more efficient vehicle. It can also help to identify which vehicles may be quote unquote problem childs that have a lot of issues and they're in and out of the workshop, off the road. They are not really earning what they should be in terms of revenue generation. So MyFleet can help both with the fuel monitoring as well as on the maintenance side and cost tracking in general. So how does the API integration influence the Italian baker's daily operation? So by not just for linking with the Shell fuel cards, but because Cartrack, we've developed an open API solution, we can integrate with other systems within the organization. So for example, we could integrate with the warehouse management system. We could integrate with the inventory management system. We could even integrate with the delivery scheduling system to help everything like kind of seamlessly link together using the data we collect from the fleet management system to influence the other aspects of the operation for a more streamlined and a more smoother, efficient way of operating a FMCG transport company. So all of these can be done, and the Cartrack API is developed specifically to integrate with whichever system is necessary. We would just need to work with the system providers to link through our API, which we have available in multiple programming languages as well, which is something that we're very proud of and we work very hard to implement. So how does the Italian baker utilize Cartrack to save time and cost? So specifically with regards to saving time, as we mentioned, MyFleet automatically validates fuel transactions. So no longer would they have to do that manual validation using data from like Excel or comparing the receipts to the km usage, or okay, we buy, let's say, 80 liters of diesel and then the truck goes about 400 km before needing to refuel again. Then there's manual calculation. There could be numbers entered wrong. So that the MyFleet system removes all of the human error and does everything automatedly through our algorithms that we have designed in our system. We can do automated route planning where we can take in the routes and we can suggest the most efficient route for a certain delivery. We have real-time visibility of the vehicles, so you wouldn't need to be checking with your drivers, are you on time? Where are you now? Why haven't you arrived? With the system, the operator will be able to see exactly where his vehicle is and where it has been, so he will be able to understand how that driver in particular or that vehicle in particular is performing its job. Geofences provides instant proof of arrival. So you would be able to tell what time your vehicle arrives at the customer site, how long it spends unloading goods, and what time he leaves the customer site. So this would help with planning for future trips. So for example, if you can see that the average delivery time on site is about 20 minutes, you would be able to then say, okay, instead of needing to say 45 minutes per drop off, let's reduce that down maybe to 30, which gives us more time to make additional deliveries in a day. And finally, dashboards and centralized fleet data reduces administrative workload. So no longer would you need to generate your own graphs or generate your own reports. The system would be able to pull that data directly from the fleet and generate it for you as well. So that reduces the time needed to prepare for presentations or meetings with the decision makers, and it will allow you to free up time to focus on more revenue generating activities. On the saving cost side, with the detection of fuel fraud early, this would allow you to take action quickly as well. So you could use the data collected from Cartrack to perhaps highlight to your fleet fuel provider, or to take action on those unscrupulous drivers who may be trying to commit fraud or defraud the company, and take action accordingly. Your proactive maintenance reminders will reduce costly breakdowns. So Cartrack has the reminder system, which can send emails to remind operators, okay, your vehicle is due for a service, perhaps it needs to go for a Puspacom inspection, perhaps the road tax is due for renewal, the insurance contract needs to be redone. So the reminders will add another layer of active proactive and preventative maintenance. Monitoring idling times will lower unnecessary fuel consumption. So, for example, a 3-ton lorry during 1 hour of engine idling may consume between 5 to 6 liters of diesel. So, even reducing your idling times by an hour a day can add up to quite a significant savings of diesel by the end of the month. So, if we were to save, let's say, 100 hours a month in idling across the fleet, that could equate to 400 to 600 liters of diesel saved, which will reduce the fuel bill and, of course, allow for more efficient usage of the fuel within your fleet. So improve route efficiency, also reduce mileage and fuel spend. So again, related to fuel saving, as well as to reduce the wear and tear on vehicle parts, brakes, fuel filters, air filters, and so on, which would allow the vehicle to spend more time on the road and less time in the workshop, and also reduce the cost of repair and replacement for these particular vehicle parts. Better driver behavior monitoring will help minimize the wear and tear. So, for example, speeding, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, which all will have effect on the brakes and the suspension and other components in the vehicle, which could be costly to replace or even repair. And having drivers who are much more gentler with the vehicles will allow the vehicles to have a longer lifespan, which would also reduce the cost of replacing the parts and of workshop fees and so on. And finally, reducing overtime through improved planning and dispatching goes back to having a better work-life balance for the personnel, and of course having less human error in the actual reports that are generated by the system. So that allows for more accurate analysis of the operations and more accurate decisions to be made. And again, back to the cycle. At the moment, Italian Baker is in the see and analyze portion, as they've only recently installed. Soon they will move on to the act side part of the cycle, where they will start to implement changes, improve the workflows, improve their processes, and then they will see how these improvements have affected their bottom line. And then the cycle will begin anew, where they will review what is currently going on, what is the next step, and then how can they act and improve further to get to as efficient as they could possibly be. We all know that there's only a certain amount of savings in terms of time and money you can do, because you still need to spend on your fuel, you still need to spend on repairs. These are things that we all understand as being constant, but there is always ways to improve. There's always ways to reduce the cost and time needed, and of course to maximize the on-the-road times for vehicles, which will in turn increase their dollar per km or their dollar per delivery value. So what are the key takeaways from our webinar today? So optimizing workflows enable businesses to improve productivity, maximize resource utilization, and operate more efficiency. So this, of course, is the goal of every fleet manager, is to get their vehicles and their fleet and their drivers to be as efficient and as cost saving as possible. Understanding how your system or how your vehicles are operated, how your drivers behave, will give you a much better understanding on what sort of implementations in terms of improvements can be done, what sort of training might be needed to be provided, what sort of monitoring and what sort of scheduling may need to be done. So reducing costs, reducing time needed, specifically on fuel, maintenance, and operations, is key to getting to the best possible point that you can be for an FMCG fleet. Now I pass over back to Chandrika for our question and answer session.
Thank you, Ian, for the very insightful, valuable insight into our topic today. High performing fleets can save time and money. We'll now move on to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box and we'll answer as many as we can. Let's just take the first question. Ian, how does this apply to smaller fleets like only about 20 vehicles? The first question.
Sure, that's a good question because not all fleets are going to be as large as the Italian Baker, but the same problems still exist even if you have a smaller fleet. You're always looking to reduce your cost in terms of repairs, your cost in terms of fuel, and of course to improve the efficiencies in your actual reporting and operations. So regardless of whether you have 20 vehicles, 300 vehicles, 1,000 vehicles, there will always be areas where you can improve, and having the data and the information from your fleet is only going to be a benefit to you as an operator to make the right decisions to improve and to reduce the cost and time needed in your fleet operations. So I would say that yes, while for larger fleets the amount may be bigger, the percentage of savings could be quite similar regardless of whether you have 20 or 300 vehicles. So I would say that workflow optimization is something that all fleets of all sizes should be focused on in their day-to-day operations.
Thanks, Ian. Now let's see what we have for the second question. Okay, so the second question is, the My Fleet only works if our company uses Shell fuel card, is it? Ian, you
Well,
want
for
to
the
take that?
Shell fuel card, we will have completely automated because we can link directly to the fuel card. However, for Malaysia specifically, we can still do fuel validation for the other fuel providers like BHP, Petronas, Petron, because we have their templates. So all that would need to be done is the customer would just need to download their fuel transaction list from the fuel card and upload that into my fleet. So no data entry needed, just download the Excel file, upload that to the system, and the system will then validate against the telematics data we've collected from the vehicles in order to make sure that the transactions are matching. And should any transaction not match up, we will highlight that as a potential fraudulent transaction through the system itself. So yes, you don't need to necessarily use Shell Fuel Card. It's just that with the Shell Fuel Card, we are linked automatically, so you won't need to do any actions for the validation. Whereas with the other providers, all you would need to do is to download the fuel transactions from the fuel card and upload that Excel file to the MyFleet system for validation. I also saw another question that is, what if a smaller fleet less than five? It's still beneficial because you would be able to understand how each of your vehicles is being used. And as I mentioned during the presentation earlier, you would able to see the maintenance costs of the vehicles and to identify whether or not it is the right time for you to dispose of an old vehicle to replace it with a new one. And also, of course, how your fuel consumption is being used by each vehicle. Perhaps you have two vehicles that are very similar. However, one has, let's say, a 30% higher fuel consumption. You could probably investigate, okay, is that related to the maintenance of the vehicle or perhaps the driver's behavior? So I believe that even for a fleet as small as three, there is still room for improvement in the fuel and in the maintenance of the vehicle, which will affect the cost of that vehicle over time.
Thanks, Ian. We have another question. Let me read it out. Does this GPS system support driver identification using a chip or tag assigned to each driver? With this chip, can the system identify which driver is driving the vehicle and record the driver's data?
Yes, Cartrack, we do have driver ID using tag, and we also can do driver ID using a scannable QR code, which will link a driver to the vehicle, and all of the activities or the behavior of that driver will be reflected in the system. So we would know which driver is driving the vehicle today and how he is performing within the vehicle. So to answer the question, yes, we do have driver identification, which each driver can be assigned a unique tag or a unique ID, which will then be able to be linked to the vehicle that that driver is driving, and all of the activity that driver performs as linked to that vehicle will be reflected in the system, in reports, and also in our driver scorecard, which customers can manually set and give weightage to different events to maybe minus the score of the driver to identify which driver may perhaps need new training or new coaching to improve their behavior and their safety when it comes to operating the vehicles. So to answer that question simply, yes, CarTrack does have driver ID in tags and also in QR linking.
Thank you, Ian. We have another question. What would be the biggest cost saver my fleet provides? Would you be
So
able
the
to take that?
Yeah, the biggest cost saver by far will definitely be fuel. So with fuel validation using my fleet, we'll be able to ensure that there's no fraudulent activity with the cards. So as I mentioned, there was an example that I have from a customer where they were seeing the fuel cost was quite high, whereas the vehicle KM still stayed about the same. And when they installed CarTrack to do the fuel validation, they were able to identify that there was a couple of drivers who were, let's say, being a bit sneaky, where they would use the company fuel card to purchase an amount of fuel that was not, let's say, not suspicious. So they knew that every time they would refuel, they would purchase about 80 liters of fuel that would need to be put into the tank. But rather than filling the tank with that 80 liters, they would fill 60 into the tank, and they would then fill 20 into a different vehicle, someone else's vehicle at the fuel pump, and pocket the money that they would collect from that person as their own. So they would fill 60, they would charge someone for the 20 liters, fill that person's vehicle, and then put the cash into their own pocket. So using my fleet, I would say that the biggest saver would definitely be fuel and also being able to identify fuel fraud. So you prevent the loss of fuel and the loss of money in that sense. But also, as a secondary saver would be the maintenance. So identifying how much the maintenance has been costing for each vehicle, and then perhaps making the decision on which vehicle needs to perhaps be changed or disposed to be replaced with a more efficient vehicle. So that would be also another way that my fleet will be able to save in the long run.
Okay, thank you, Ian. We have one more question here. Is your service available in Sabah and Sarawak, and how much is the cost?
Yes, we are available in Sabah and Sarawak, and the good thing is that there is no difference in our pricing for West Malaysia and East Malaysia. In fact, I've actually helped some customers in East Malaysia to deploy the system. For example, we did a deployment for QL Agro Resources, and later on this month, we'll be doing a deployment for Salkra in Sabah, in Sarawak, where we'll be installing our devices and our cameras for them to monitor their vehicles and their drivers. And the cost is the same. We don't have an East Malaysia pricing. The price book is the same whether you're in East or West Malaysia. The only difference may be for East Malaysia deployment, it may take a slightly longer time, as of course we may need to send additional fitters over there at the moment, but we are looking to expand the local presence that Cartrack has in terms of technicians in East Malaysia. And of course, during the installation process, we will coordinate directly with our customers to schedule it out in a way that that every vehicle can be installed in a timely manner according to customer requirements as well.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Okay, another question coming in. Can this GPS system operate in areas with no internet or mobile network coverage? For example, in remote areas of Sarawak. If there's no signal, will the GPS continue to record data and upload it once the connection is restored?
Yes, the device will be able to collect the data and store it locally on board in its internal storage if there is no internet connection. We are able to store about 24 hours worth of GPS and telematics data on board the device in the vehicle before it will need to be pushed to the internet. So, as long as the vehicle is able to have a connection at least once every 24 hours, the data stored on board will then be pushed to the cloud and automatically populated into our servers and into the system. So while the vehicle is not in signal, unfortunately, there will not be any live data. But as soon as connection is re-established, the data will be repopulated and all of the trip info will be repopulated into the system and onto the map for us to review it and to see it in the system itself. So yes, we are able to continue to record data even if there is no active internet connection for that vehicle.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Please keep your questions coming in, yeah? We have one more here. Um, well, I think it's the same question, though. I think you've answered it. If there's a problem with the system and if the system is down, what happens? Yeah?
Yeah, for in the event in the unlikely event of the system being down, the simplest and best option for customers would be to send us an email to our support team for them to create a ticket that will allow us to address the issue for customers. So, as a standard, if it is a software issue, within 4 to 6 working hours, we might be able to have a solution. Whereas for a hardware issue where we will need to go to the vehicle physically, we usually are able to arrange something within 1 to 2 working days.
Thank you, Ian. Which type of daily, weekly, monthly report would be the most useful for managers to look at and review? It's another question, Ian.
Right. So that is quite a subjective question because it would also depend on what the manager is focusing on at the time. So, for example, we have our fuel efficiency report, which would allow the manager to see the efficiency of the fuel consumption in their vehicle. So, how many liters have been consumed this week or this month? How many kilometers have been driven? What is the liters per km? What is the liters per 100 km? That sort of information. And of course, what is the liters per hour, which would allow managers to understand the cost of idling. So if the liters per hour is 6, that means that for every hour of idling, 6 liters of diesel would be consumed. And all of our reports can be set up in a recurring manner. So for example, you could set it up to recur every Monday to have a fuel efficiency report sent out automatically, which would give you the fuel efficiency information for the previous week of consumption in the vehicles. We also have trip reports, we have driver logbooks, we have driver working hours, we have, of course, speeding reports. Actually, we have over 130 different reports in the Cartrack system that can be generated depending on the requirements of the individual customer.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of the questions, unless anyone else has got any last minute questions. I don't think so. Okay, guys, not to worry. So Ian, you want to say something here?
Yes, no, I just want to thank everyone once again for joining us for this webinar. I hope that it was informative and gave you a better idea of how Cartrack would be able to add value to your operations. And if you had any further questions, or perhaps you wanted a live demo and presentation specifically for you and your company, please feel free to reach out. My email is on screen as well as my contact number. Drop me an email or send me a WhatsApp, and I'll be more than happy to arrange a face-to-face presentation or demo at your your company site. I go all across Malaysia, so whether you're in Penang or Johor or Ipoh or Malacca or KL, I'd be more than happy to arrange something with you where I come and present in detail and discuss what package and what features would be most suited and would add the most value to you and your operations. So once again, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope today's session has given you valuable insights into how workflow optimization can help businesses operate more efficiently, reduce costs, and achieve sustainable long-term growth. Keep a lookout for our next webinar on our social media pages. And until then, take care and have a wonderful evening.